The woman across the table tilted her phone, and the screen's white light erased her face. She smiled at something I could not see, her thumb moving in a quick, practiced swipe. I took a sip of water and looked around the bar, a place filled with loud music and other people performing the same ritual of mutual disinterest. My own phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Her name was Jennifer or Jessica, and she had spent the last 20 minutes showing me pictures of a dog she did not own. My drink was finished. My patience was gone. I placed my hands on the small wooden table. "I am so sorry." She looked up, her eyes adjusting to the low light. "I just got a text from my office. There is a shipping container issue in Singapore." "Oh, I have to go deal with it. It was really nice to meet you." I stood up before she could ask any questions about logistics or time zones. I put enough cash on the table to cover her drink and my own, then walked away without looking back. The cool night air felt good on my face. On the train ride home, I deleted her number and the dating app from my phone. The feeling was not anger, just a deep exhaustion that settled into my bones. My apartment was quiet when I got inside. I walked past the bookshelf where my books were sorted alphabetically by author and went into the kitchen. I put my keys in the small ceramic bowl on the counter. Everything in my apartment had a place. It was clean and organized, a system where every piece fit and there were no surprises. I sat on my gray sofa and listened to the silence, feeling the tension from the bar leave my body. This was better. This was manageable. My phone buzzed again, this time with a storm of notifications from the Pastore family group chat. A picture of my sister Gaby's hand appeared on my screen. A diamond ring was on her finger. A flood of celebratory messages followed, a digital wave of noise and expectation. An hour later, I was at my parents' house. The place was loud and smelled of garlic and tomato sauce. My whole family was already there, talking over each other in a joyful chaos. My father clapped me on the shoulder, and my mother kissed my cheek, her hands smelling of basil. Gaby ran to me and wrapped me in a hug. She was vibrating with excitement. "Can you believe it? Congratulations, Gaby." We sat down for dinner. The table was crowded with plates of lasagna and bowl of salad. For a while, the conversation was all about the wedding, the venue, the dress. Then my tia Anna turned her attention to me. She was a woman with loud, curly hair and a bright red dress. "Hugo, you look so handsome, but so lonely over there." She pointed with her fork towards the kitchen. "The waitress, you see her. Her niece is single. A very nice girl." I smiled and took a large bite of lasagna. It was the same at every family gathering. I remembered watching my cousins get pushed down this same path. Their weddings big and expensive, their divorces quiet and messy. I saw my own parents at the end of the table, sitting next to each other but a mile apart, their marriage a long polite performance. This was the system they wanted for me, and I wanted no part of it. I excused myself from the table and went out to the backyard, pulling my phone from my pocket. "PK. Hey, how bad is it?" Tia Anna tried to set me up with the waitress's niece. I could hear him sigh on the other end. "I just got ghosted. The guy said I was boring because I wanted to go to a museum instead of a club." I sat on the steps of the back porch. The noise from the house was a low rumble behind me. We are a tragic pair. At least you get lasagna out of your tragedy. I just get an empty apartment. You can have my leftovers. My whole life is about to become leftovers from Gaby's wedding season. We were quiet for a moment, two men tired of the same game. My other line started ringing. It was Gaby. "1 second, PK. The instigator of my doom is calling." I switched over. "Hello, Hugo? Where did you go?" Gaby's voice was a happy scream. "Listen, I was just thinking. This means you have a whole year to find a real +1, Hugo. No more showing up alone." Her words landed like a sentence. A whole year. A whole year of Tia Anna. A whole year of bad dates and forced conversations. A whole year of failing to meet their expectations. Something inside me, a gear that had been grinding for years, finally clicked into a new position. I looked at my phone's home screen, at the neat grid of apps on my calendar. A logistical problem requires a logistical solution. "Gaby, I have to go. I will talk to you later." I switched back to PK. I have a plan, I said. It's crazy, but it might work. We met an hour later at a small bar near his apartment. The place had wooden booths and soft lighting, and we could hear each other talk. I ordered an IPA, and he got a lager. Okay, PK said, leaning forward. What is this grand plan? It's a pact, I said, a perpetual +1 pact. I explained the terms. For 1 year, starting now and ending at Gaby's wedding, we would be each other's default date for every mandatory social event. Family dinners, holiday parties, weddings. No more awkward setups, no more pitying looks, no more terrible app dates. It was a mutual defense agreement. PK looked at me, a doubtful expression on his kind face. So we pretend to be a couple? No, we are not pretending anything. We are just going to events together, as friends, as each other's +1. It's a social arrangement, not a romantic one. What if people think we're actually dating? Let them, I said. It's better than them thinking we are available. This is the most honest solution, PK. It saves us from the performance of bad first dates and the pressure from our families. It is an efficiency hack for our social lives. He took a long drink of his beer. I could see him thinking about it, weighing the awkwardness against the exhaustion. He thought about the lonely weddings and the draining dates that stretched out before him. Okay, he said slowly. Okay, I'll do it. A feeling of relief washed over me, so strong it surprised me. I grabbed a paper napkin from the dispenser on the table and pulled a blue pen from my jacket pocket. We need rules, I said. I wrote them down on the napkin. 1. Mandatory attendance at all pact-related events. 2. Plausible affection only. Hand on the back is okay. Holding hands is fine, no kissing. 3. An escape clause. If one of us meets someone real, the pact can be dissolved with 2 weeks' notice. I slid the napkin across the table. PK read it and nodded. Seems fair. He looked up at me, a small smile on his face. To a year of peace and quiet, he said. To a year of peace and quiet, I repeated. We shook hands across the table. The deal was sealed. My boss, Mr. Henderson, leaned in close, his breath smelling of cheap whiskey and shrimp. So, when are you two going to make it official? He asked, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder while gesturing with his glass toward PK across the ballroom. This was the first real test of the pact. A corporate holiday party in a hotel ballroom that looked like a blizzard of red and green tinsel had struck it. PK was over by the bar, charming a few people from accounting with a story that was making them all laugh. He looked good in a dark blazer, comfortable and easy in a way I never was at these things. I saw him glance over at me and give a small, subtle nod, a check-in to make sure I was surviving. The pact was a system, a set of rules for mutual social defense, and it was working perfectly. We spent the night a few feet from each other, a gravitational pull of our own making, and we made fun of Mr. Henderson's terrible toupee and left 2 hours earlier than I usually managed. It was the first company party I had ever actually enjoyed. The next 10 months fell into that same rhythm. We were a unit. For my cousin's baptism, we developed the story of how we met, a slightly fictionalized version of our college days that involved a disastrous chemistry lab experiment. At a friend's housewarming, we coordinated our outfits without even discussing it, both showing up in similar gray sweaters, which earned a lot of comments about how cute we were. The performance became second nature. The act grew so refined it started to feel less like an act and more like a simple truth. By the time Thanksgiving arrived, the Pastor family's high holy day of obligation, I was not even nervous. PK walked into the chaos of my parents' house with a homemade Thai sticky rice pudding with mango, and he instantly neutralized my entire family. My mother loved him. My aunts cornered him for the recipe. My father talked to him about graphic design for 20 minutes, which was 10 minutes longer than he'd ever talked to any of my previous actual girlfriends. Our lives became one life. We did grocery shopping together because it was more efficient. We ended most nights on my couch watching old movies because neither of us wanted to go home to an empty apartment. The lie we were telling everyone was built on a foundation of small, comfortable truths. a domesticity that had taken root without a contract or a conversation. The performance peaked at Gaby's bridal shower. I was expected to give a speech. I stood up in my family's crowded living room, holding a glass of champagne, and I looked at PK. He gave me that same small nod from the holiday party. I talked about how supportive he was, how he remembered small things, how he made every room he entered a little warmer. I told the story of how he stayed up all night with me to help finish a major logistics projection for work, bringing me coffee and just being there so I was not alone. Everything I said was true, taken directly from the archives of our friendship, and I just rearranged the facts to fit the shape of a romance. When I finished, the room was silent for a second before all my aunts started crying. Gabby hugged me so hard I thought she might crack a rib. Later, Tia Anna cornered me by the dessert table, her eyes still a little wet. She put her hand on my arm. "He looks at you with real love, Hugo," she said, her voice low. "Not like the show your father always put on for your mother." The words landed wrong, a sharp, cold impact in my chest. I gave a small laugh and told her she was being sentimental, but I could not shake the comment. The mention of my parents, with their long history of polite, public affection and cold, private distance, was a direct hit on the fortress I had built. I had designed the pact to avoid that exact kind of performative misery. For the first time, I let myself just feel the warmth of having PK by my side without filtering it through the logic of our arrangement. The feeling was terrifying. It was a variable I had not accounted for. PK must have felt some kind of change too. A few weeks later, he started to seem distant. He was quieter, spending more time looking at his phone. I think he started to feel like a character in my story, a well-loved accessory I brought to family functions. His old insecurity, the fear of being just a nice, agreeable person, was coming back. We went to a gallery opening for one of his designer friends. The rooms were white and quiet, the opposite of my family's house. I watched him talk to a woman near a large, abstract painting. She was a PhD candidate named Maya, and she looked at him with an intense, focused interest. She was not asking about us, she was asking about him. She was seeing him, not the half of a couple he had become. A week later, we were supposed to attend a wedding for a mutual college friend. It was on the shared calendar, an official pact event. "I don't think I can make it to Sarah's wedding," he said one evening, his eyes on the television screen. "I have an early morning project the next day." It was the first time either of us had tried to break a rule. The pact was mandatory attendance. That was the core of the system. I felt a sudden, sharp need to enforce the structure. "The whole point is that we go to these things together," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "That's the agreement." He finally looked at me, and his expression was something I had never seen before, a mix of guilt and defiance. "It's just one wedding, Hugo." The lie was a thin piece of glass between us. I could see right through it, but I did not say anything else. The night of the wedding, my apartment felt too big and too quiet. I missed him. I missed the easy way he existed in my space. I scrolled through my phone, a pointless exercise in passing time, and saw a friend from college had posted a gallery of photos from the wedding. My thumb stopped moving. It was a group picture, a loud, happy collection of faces. In the background, slightly out of focus but still perfectly clear, was PK. He was smiling, and his arm was around Maya's waist. Her head was tilted toward his. The world went silent. It was not a loud explosion, but a quiet, complete implosion. I was alone in my apartment, staring at a picture on a tiny screen. I zoomed in, my fingers shaking a little. I saw the way his hand rested on her back. I saw the genuine, unperformed smile on his face. The betrayal was not that he was with someone else. The betrayal was the lie. The betrayal was the secret. The perfect, logical system I had designed to protect me from emotional chaos had just delivered the most efficiently painful gut punch of my life. The control was an illusion. The jealousy was real. I confronted him the next day. The words came out cold and clipped, each one a brick in a new wall between us. "You broke the pact," I said. "You lied to me." "It's not a real relationship, Hugo," he shot back, his voice tight with a frustration that had clearly been building for months. I'm allowed to want something real for myself. Every word was a weapon. I used the Pact's logic to call him a traitor. He used the Pact's fakeness to call my feelings invalid. We talked about rules and clauses and agreements because we were both too terrified to talk about the actual heart of the matter. We were cowards, hiding behind the fine print of a deal we had made in a car a year ago. He left. The pact was over. Our friendship was a crater. I was alone in my perfectly organized apartment, and the only thing I felt was the grim satisfaction of being right all along. Every relationship was a transaction, a performance, a lie waiting to be exposed. Even the one I invented myself. He started seeing Maya, trying to build the real thing he said he wanted, but I would hear from mutual friends that he seemed distracted, that he was not really there. The easy comfort was gone. He had his freedom, and I had my system, and we were both completely miserable. The doorbell rang at 11 o'clock on the night before my sister's wedding, and I knew exactly who it was. I had spent the last 3 weeks in a self-imposed isolation inside my apartment, which had become a sterile monument to order and control. The furniture was all gray and black, the surfaces were clear, and the silence was absolute. I walked to the door and opened it. PK stood in the hallway wearing the dark suit he had bought for the wedding. He looked tired, with faint lines under his eyes, and his usual easy posture was gone, replaced by a tense stillness. He did not wait for me to speak. I ended things with Maya, he said. His voice was quiet. I stood there, my body rigid, and said nothing. I just let him keep talking into the vacuum I had created between us. We went on a few dates, he continued, his eyes fixed on mine. It was fine. We were in a little cafe, and she was asking me about a project, and I started telling her a story about that logistics projection you had, the one we stayed up all night to finish. I thought it was just a story, but she stopped me. He took a small breath. She said, I feel like I'm only getting about 70% of you. The other 30% seems to be permanently reserved for this Hugo guy. I told her you were my best friend, and she just looked at me and said, I know. But when you talk about him, you light up in a way you don't for anything else. You're trying to figure out if we can be real, but it sounds like you already had it. Whatever it was real to you. The words he relayed landed in the quiet of my apartment. They were not my words or his, but they held a truth that dismantled my defenses. The pact was a lie, PK said, finally stepping over the threshold. But we were not. I was happier making grocery lists with you than I was on any date with her. That was the most genuine thing in my life, and I was too much of a coward to see it. I lied to you because I was afraid I wasn't enough, that I was just a convenience for you to survive your family. I thought you only saw me as part of your system. I finally found my voice. The system was the point, I said, and the words came out cold. I built it to avoid exactly this mess. My parents spent 30 years performing a happy marriage in public while they were miserable in private. I saw it my whole life. The pact was designed to keep emotions out of it, to keep it from becoming that. But it did become that, he said, his voice rising with a painful urgency. It became real, Hugo. I fell in love with you somewhere between your cousin's baptism and that Thanksgiving where your Tia Anna cornered me for a recipe. I fell in love with you, and I was terrified. My own confession came out like a piece of glass. I know, it happened to me too. We stood there with the truth finally between us, raw and awful and beautiful. It was too much. The logical walls I had rebuilt were crumbling again, and I did not know what to do with the rubble. I have to go to the wedding tomorrow, I said, the words a retreat into practicality. I'm the bride's brother. I have to be there, and I have to go alone. I can't cause a scene. He looked at me for a long moment, his face full of a pain that matched my own. Then he just nodded and turned and left. The next day I sat in a dark wood pew in the church. The air was heavy and smelled of white flowers. Light came through the stained glass windows, painting colors on the well-dressed guests who spoke in quiet voices. I wore my own dark gray suit, a piece of armor for the final battle, and felt the weight of my family's expectant eyes on my empty side. I was miserable, but I was surviving. It was what I had trained myself to do. The organ music began, a signal for everyone to turn and watch the procession. Just as the first bridesmaid started her walk, a figure appeared at the back of the church. PK walked down the main aisle, his eyes looking for me. He found my pew and slid in beside me, his leg pressing against mine. "I can't do this," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the music. "I can't sit on the other side of the aisle and pretend to just be your friend. That's the lie. I'm done with lies. Is this real, Hugo? Or are we just an escape clause?" The question hung in the air. My entire family was watching us now. Gabby was standing at the back of the church, ready to walk, her face a picture of confusion. I looked at their faces, at the world of expectation and tradition I had fought against for so long. Then I looked at PK. This was the one variable I could not control, the one chaos that mattered. This was the choice, my old system or this new reality. I stood up. I took PK's hand in mine. Without looking back, we walked out of the pew and down the aisle, away from the altar, leaving the music and the stunned silence of my family behind us. We pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the bright afternoon. The sunlight was sharp, and the sounds of city traffic felt loud after the quiet of the church. We were standing on the sidewalk, holding hands, the muffled sounds of the ceremony starting again behind us. We were free from the pact, from the performance, from everything we had been hiding from. We just looked at each other for a long time. It was a terrifying and vulnerable and wonderful new beginning. "Okay," I said, squeezing his hand. "What now?"